What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ, Bucky together before the 4th of July. Buck, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. I am here in North Carolina. It's a little hot. It's a little muggy. It's been a minute since I've spent like a full week in North Carolina, so I'm trying to readjust to that southern. I want to say hospitality, southern hospitality and the southern humidity, because it's wearing me out right now.
Well, I think I'm honoring you because I don't have the air on in my office anymore. I'm just trying to feel your pain. We've got a fun episode today. We've got our buddy Chris Petersen, who you know from his great coaching career at Boise State, at the University of Washington. Then got out of it at a young age, voluntarily. I mean, he has turned down a bunch of jobs over the years. He decided he wanted to go try and help people in the leadership space, and then also doing some great work over at Fox on their college football coverage. But really one of the bright minds in football, forget any level. I think he's really one of the bright minds and one of the kind of innovators of the last 20 years. If you're going to put a list of guys and put 10 names on that list, I think Chris Petersen probably find his way on there.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about the job that he did at Boise, and then if you ask around and people talk about the impact that he had when he was at Oregon and just the way that he always had his teams able to play up. We saw the success that he had at Washington, but going back to those Boise days and how those teams played and operated, man, you have to tip your cap to him. And so to have an opportunity to speak to him, can't be more excited about it.
Yeah, and if you're a football fan, an NFL football fan, and you happen to care about the Cowboys, love them or hate them, you'll hear a little bit about Kellen Moore in this conversation, talking about his relationship with Dak, what they're able to accomplish. And then if you're a Charger fan or a Justin Herbert fan, a little bit about what to expect with Kellen Moore and Justin Herbert teaming up with the Chargers as he's their new offensive coordinator. So we're going to go a lot of different directions with this conversation. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Here's our chat with Chris Petersen. All right, Buck, here he is. It's great to be with Coach Pete again. Coach, thank you so much for the time, man. First of all, we got to get your give us an update on the summer here. What have we done to kind of get away, get a little rest and relaxation here?
Well, that's a priority in my life these days. That's one of the reasons I'm not coaching, so I can prioritize that after all these years of coaching. Well, about maybe a month and a half ago, I just got back from a couple weeks in Portugal.
Ooh.
Yeah, hadn't been there.
Did you go surfing, Coach? Did you go surfing?
I did not go chase the 100-foot wave. I wanted to, but I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now. So, yeah, that was great. And just, now in Seattle, right now is in Seattle. And this is as we were talking, this is the time to be here right now.
Hey, DJ, don't let Coach Petersen off the hook, because let me tell you what I discovered a couple weeks ago. I'm down for Elite 11 finals, and I happen to bounce out there, and Coach Pete he's out there lending his expertise and his services. And so I pull him off to the side, kind of tell him what's going on with me. We're talking about the stuff or whatever. But Coach Pete is over there watching the wide receivers. And DJ, if you've ever been to one of his practices, whether at Boise or when he was at UW, he's a stickler for the details. So DJ, he leaves me mid-sentence to make sure that the tempo is up to par. And because Elite 11 isn't like a college practice, it's not quite a high school practice. The tempo is kind of summer tempo, DJ. Like, no one's really bouncing around from drill to drill. And you can just see Coach Pete like, hey, man, what are we doing? Like, we got to pick this thing up. So, yes, he's relaxed and all that, but the coach is always a coach, and he's always coaching.
Bucky, let me just say this. I don't think I'll ever be in the summer tempo on a football field. I like that. I might have to use that term, though. I like that.
Summer tempo. That is amazing.
He was not in summer tempo at all.
That's amazing. Buck, you just took me exactly where I wanted to go, Coach, because I want to, since when you started coaching, and I think we've touched on this a little bit in the past, but I'd be curious where you are now. There's obviously, it's a different landscape with the off seasons with these high school kids, whereas when we were growing up, we went out with our high school buddies and maybe we went out and threw on our own. Maybe coach could wrangle up a couple 7-on-7s for, a couple local teams. Nothing like this, where it almost feels like, for the most part, these kids exit their high school program over the summer, similar to basketball players. And it's like an AAU environment, and they're traveling around doing all this stuff. And I guess two-parter here. Number one, how much has it changed during your time? And number two, is it better?
It has definitely changed. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if it's better. Like I have real mixed feelings on that. It's just interesting. Just the specialization, how early guys are going at this thing, especially the quarterback position. And I still just have really mixed emotions on that. I think high school and certainly younger is about playing as many sports as you possibly can and just being exposed to them and not really specializing. You could, I think maybe when you get that junior, senior year in high school, one of the things that we'd always look for, two-sport athlete. We still thought that was the greatest thing ever, the two-sport athlete. And I think, we talked to, some of the NFL coaches and stuff, they still the same thing. Like, what did he do in high school? How many did he play? Just specialize in that one. I think, we talk a long time on that, but I just even think mentally, it's just not the right thing to do. And I love it when I see guys playing basketball and baseball and track and football and, heck, golf or whatever else they can mix in there. I just think that's what it should be about.
Well, let me ask a quick follow-up on that then, because I want to go back to your time at Boise. Like right now, if you were the head coach at Boise State, is there almost like is there a value find out there in finding those kind of old school multi-sport kids that all these major programs have bypassed because they weren't at such and such 7-on-7 tournament where they got their 5th star or what have you?
Yeah.
That might be, it almost feels like it could be a little like market inefficiency, so to speak, where there's a segment out there that's not being, properly evaluated because they are doing it the way we used to do it back in the day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I do think with the world we live in, keeping those guys kind of secret that you might be trying to recruit, those days are long and over. I remember when I first came to Washington, it's like they'd always talk about Don James drawing a fence around the state and we got to do that. We got to get back to that. And I'm thinking, yeah, I want to do that. But like, what are we going to build a wall? Because like, there's the internet, there's social media, like that wasn't going on back in that day. And so really hard to, I think if the kids are good enough, you're going to find them for the most part. Sometimes guys do slide under the radar. Someone's going to find them though. Yeah. And, maybe they're going to go to a level, maybe a little beneath what they could develop into. And I do think that's really one of the most important things. I always would say this, I learned this from my dad. My dad was a coach. And he would always say, the whole trick to this is going to the highest level that you can play at. Keywords being that you can play at. And I remember, I grew up in Northern California and thinking, I'm going to maybe go to Cal. And I kind of had that in my mind for a long time. And he's like, yeah, you can go to Cal, but you need to go to Cal Davis, not Cal Berkeley. And it wasn't so much in those words, but that's really what it was. And, I remember, I was slightly recruited out of high school to some different places and thinking San Diego State and all these different, Cal, and that was always on the radar. And he's like, listen, you can go and be on the team there, but you're going to struggle to really play a bunch. You need to find that level. My dad was a coach that, knew talent or, kind of relatively levels. And I think about my time at UC Davis, and I would tell recruits this all the time. I wouldn't trade that for anything. You couldn't go back and say, we put you at Washington as a freshman. And, I wouldn't trade that for anything because I was at the right level for myself.
Coach, so dealing with high school athletes is really so hard now with recruiting changing, with the transfer portal and all those things going. It's hard to get guys to understand the beauties of playing maybe beneath D1. And so when you're thinking about looking at guys and those things, if you were a coach now, man, what would it take at a high level? What would it take for someone to really pop to say, hey, I'm going to recruit this guy as opposed to jumping in the portal and doing those things? Because I don't think enough kids know how hard it is to be regarded as a D1 athlete.
I mean, what is the percentages? It's like, it's such a small percentage of all the kids in the country that play high school football that will actually go play Division I. But that's where so much of the social media is. I think that's where that's changed that. Like, it's like, it's, again, I went to a junior college before I went to UC Davis. My dad was a junior college coach. So I got the benefits of that. And so whether it's junior college, Division III, NAIA, Division II, it just doesn't, there's so many different levels. And in some ways, I'm telling you, there's so much more beauty these days, what's going on at the Division I level. There's so much more beauty at those levels. The purity of the game and playing for it is really supposed to be about than some of this craziness we're seeing at the other level.
Well, you mentioned in your background, Coach at UC Davis as a player, but think about, you know all the names. I mean, the number of coaches that have come out of UC Davis. I think about the number of coaches that have come out of John Carroll, obviously a lower level of football. But not only are we producing coaches at some of these lower levels, I think to your point about innovation and trying new things and really pushing the game forward, it seems like that's almost driven from the bottom up as opposed from the top down.
I think there's a lot of truth there. It's kind of interesting how this whole thing is kind of changed a little bit, where, I mean, high school coaches will try anything. They're in my mind, they're the innovators. Like, they don't have that pressure and that fear of, like, in most places of, like, if this doesn't work, man, I got the nation breathing down on me. And so, when I first started, everything was kind of top down. It came from the NFL. And then things started to change. You saw a lot of the college game going into the NFL. But really, I think a lot of that came from the high school game with the quarterback run game and the RPO game. I'll never forget this. This is interesting. So this was a handful of years back now. This was in like the mid 2000s, like maybe 2010, somewhere around there. I was at Boise State and I was in a meeting. We were in a head coaches meeting and they were just talking about the rule where linemen could go down field 3 yards in college. It was only a yard before. Yeah. And I'm sitting next to Chris Alt, the great coach, the Hall of Fame coach from Nevada. I mean, people don't realize how good that guy, back in the day when he was a young head coach, they threw the ball all over everywhere. And then he invented, basically the pistol offense and then brought to light with Colin Kaepernick. I mean, and we saw that evolve right in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in this meeting and they're telling us, hey, there's new rules coming in that the lineman can go downfield 3 yards. And he looks at me and he's like, wait, did I hear that right? And I said, yeah, lineman can go down. And he goes, this changes everything. And I remember writing that down and I'm thinking, how in the hell does this change everything? How is this guy? And sure enough, like I was thinking the screen game maybe.
Yeah.
But it really was that RPO game. And then, I know the rules are different in NFL and they're so detailed and they're so on every little minute, situation. They just don't go down field as far. But it was, those little rule changes. And then again, the colleges were dabbling, but the high schools to me were the ones that really were spearheading a lot of this change that we would see. And the pros would see it and they'd take it to their level.
Buck, hey Buck, I remember going in there. Was it Vital? What was the name of the little running back that was with Kaepernick during those years? I remember going to scout.
I can't remember.
Rush for a zillion yards. They had, that was fun offense to watch back then, man.
Look, if you weren't on the other sideline, it was.
I just remember going to watch them play, and he didn't bring his team out for pregame warmups.
He did. He did that.
So we're there to body type all the guys, and they don't run out. The other team is, I think it might have been Hawaii. The other team is on the other end, looking around, waiting for them to come out, and they don't run out until it's time to play the game. And I'm like, this dude. I mean, look, I love the innovation. He wasn't the easiest with the scouts to go on with. He wasn't the easiest.
Hey, we all have our things, but let me just say this: he can coach. Because I remember that we were playing them, and I'm like, we're at their place. I'm like, where are these guys? I'm thinking, is there a chance they're going to forfeit? I'll take it. And I look over, and they're on their practice field, and it doesn't look like normal warm-ups to me. I think they're practicing before they're going to play us.
Yeah, they are. So it's funny that you bring them up, Coach, because with Colin Kaepernick in the National Football League, it kind of ushered in like the wave of the athletic quarterback. So now bringing it back to your level, you just spent a lot of time with the Elite 11 quarterbacks. Is it now a prerequisite that your quarterback have a level of athleticism? Not that you feature him in the run game, but man, you got to be able to do a little something in the run game now if you're going to play not only in college, but at upper levels.
It changes the game. And I think everybody's seeing that. And they know how much, I mean, we all know how much these quarterbacks are paid. And back in the day, there's like, no way am I risking that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it gives you such an advantage in terms of winning. Doesn't mean you're going to run them all, it doesn't mean you got to be Lamar Jackson and really like run. But the fact that he can pull the ball and will pull the ball, I mean, that changes the numbers game completely. And I think it's funny because, a handful of years ago, again, the old days, 5-8 years ago, if the guy could run a little bit, that was a bonus.
Yeah.
You had your Tom Brady's and Drew Breeses and these pocket passers. Now it's kind of flipped. The pocket passers, if that's all they do, seems just so rare, Not that it can't be done. You're going to play to the guy's strengths, but when they are athletic, and like you said, those kids at the Elite 11, I mean, all those kids are pretty athletic. They can move. They can do enough of what we're talking about for sure.
That's one of the DJ. Let me follow on that because Coach talked about innovation now coming from the bottom up. So now think about all those high school guys who just looked in the gym and said, look, I got to take the best athlete and put him at the position where he touches the ball the most and has the biggest impact. So high schools are basically the reason why we're seeing the quarterbacks at the collegiate level and at the higher level, because the high school coach decided, I'm going to put the ball in the hands of my best athlete and make everybody else figure out how to stop him.
I mean, just think about the skill and the years and the time it takes to become this elite pocket passer. Well, nobody has that time, not even in high school. You're going to get fired and so you do that. It's like, once the creativity box has been open and shown to others, like, wait, there's a lot of good athletes in this school. There's not a lot of really elite pocket passers walking up and down the hallways. So I can take a couple of these guys and we can put something together that's pretty special. And that's what they've done. And then I think, again, the NFL guy, I mean, you talk to any of the D coordinators and it's like, okay. I remember when the college game was really running quarterbacks, when they started running zone read, all this stuff, whether it's third down, goal line, whatever, just dabbling. And they're like, yeah, we don't have to see that. We don't have to deal with that. And I just kept thinking, you're going to have to deal with that. You better get ready. And it really kind of surprised me how long it did take for those guys to be where we are today. I thought it would have happened faster, but I think it's because they're paying those quarterbacks so much money. They're just like, I am not doing this. But I think if you don't do it, you're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, we have talked about this in the past and talked about how now, because you're not paying the quarterbacks as much as we did. Stafford, I think, was the last year with the rookie contracts were out of control. And then they ended up changing everything in the salary cap era. Whereas that would buy you some time to struggle, to be Peyton Manning, to be, Troy Aikman, these guys who struggled early. Now, when you're not paying those guys as much on those rookie deals, there's not as much a long of a leash. The coaches don't have as long of a leash as So in order to be a pure pocket passer, the knowledge is everything. So if you're not afforded the luxury to have the time to build up the knowledge base, then you're out. Whereas you can use your legs to buy time until your knowledge base is widened, and then you've got everything going. But that's kind of what we're talking about how this thing changed.
You're exactly right. And, there's a couple guys, because I saw one in college a lot, and then we played against one being Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He was this big old strong arm thrower, right? That was accuracy a little bit, maybe the issue in college, but he could run and he could do some things, right? And so that might've bought him a little bit of time as he developed his game and learned it. And the other one was Jalen Hurts. We played against him in Alabama in the playoffs at Washington. And he was athletic and could move, and they played to his strengths. But passing skills, I mean, I'm just so amazed how he's truly developed his next level passing skills since we saw him back in the day. You don't see that often, those guys be able to develop that accuracy so late. Usually it happens, in my experience, kind of in the high school and then, through college. I just hadn't seen so many guys in the NFL really change their accuracy. And those two guys have done that.
Coach, like going back to your time as a college head coach, if we could fast forward and say you're a head coach right now, when you think about stocking your quarterback room, Do you have all the quarterbacks with a similar skill set, or do you just try and take the best ones that you can recruit and try and figure it out along the way?
First of all, that word that you said, there's no such thing as stalking your quarterback room.
No.
You hope you got one, and then somebody else that at least can take snaps and hand it off. I mean, that's what's crazy about that, right? The quarterback and football in general is a developmental game. But that makes it really tough in terms of how the transfer portal is having an effect on things. So it's kind of scary. But I do think this. I think you have a philosophy and an idea of how you want to play offensive football, and you recruit to that. And then when you get that guy, he may be a little bit better at some things than you thought and a little bit worse than you think, things that you thought, and you really try to tailor it to play to his strengths. I mean, as we all know, it all runs through the quarterback. Like it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're a wing T offense. I don't care if you throw the ball, if you're Army, Navy, Air Force and all, like, and you're not going to throw it hardly at all. You still got to have that quarterback, whatever you're doing. And so whatever you have there, that's where it starts and ends a lot of times.
Coach, while we're on quarterbacks, do you think you can convince Bucky this year with his high school team, maybe throw it more than 5 times this year?
Oh, you're an Army Air Force believer. I love it.
Look, tell him, Buck. If you haven't told him yet, tell him.
So I told him we went through. We made it all the way to the state championship game without completing the pass, and then
zero. Coach, zero. This is, by the way, tell him the quarterback who played at your high school, and then put this all together here. Tell him who played quarterback at your high school.
Okay, so I'm the head coach at Granada Hills Charter High School, which is where the great John Elway. His name, the stadium is named after John Elway. It's John Elway Stadium, and yet they have all this innovation. They were doing 5 wides in the 70s, and all that. And here we are running the ball every down,
and beating the brakes off people, Coach. I mean, I'm talking about
we completed 2 in the state game and got beat. We completed 2 in the state. Probably because
you got away from what you did and threw it.
Thank you.
I gotta hand this to you though. I think that is like so beautiful and because everybody's just copycats. Everybody's running spread offense. Everybody's no huddle. Everybody's how much can we throw it? And for you to go back and do kind of what nobody's doing except for maybe a handful of teams, that's a competitive advantage. And then you think they got three days to kind of get ready to play you? No chance.
Is there a chance though along those lines that we see that this, everything's cyclical, that like the Army Navy thing that somebody picks that back up, or is that over, Coach?
That's a good question. I think so much has to do with recruiting. I think that's why they do it. But I think we're seeing so much more of it right in front of our face with the gun, with the pistol, with the zone read. I mean, it's all veer football, option football from 20 years ago. It just looks differently. Mm-hmm. Now, not throwing it at all, Bucky, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
So it's funny that you brought that up because Jeff Monken is a friend, and Army has had to change their offense because the new rules in college where you can't cut block down the field.
Yeah.
And he has talked about how it really negated the advantage that Army, Navy, and Air Force have because on the perimeter, they can't cut. So DJ, at West Point, they're having to go to more of a spread, throw it around. Some of the stuff that Coastal was doing and some of the stuff that Liberty would do with Damon Chadwell. But, the rules, like Coach talked about sitting in a meeting years ago with Chris Alt, the rules really dictate how you may have to play because it negates some of the advantages that you may have had for years.
Yeah, good point.
That's fascinating, man. Coach, you talked about a little bit about Boise. I'm gonna go back. Obviously, Kellen, the success you had with him, and to see the run he's been on. Obviously, the offenses with the Cowboys in the top 5 just about every year he was there. Now he gets to team up with Justin Herbert. How do you think that marriage works? And I'm not taking any shots at Dak, who's been unbelievable. I think Kellen went on the record, so he's the best leader he's ever been around and loved. I mean, they have a great relationship, loves him as a player. But in terms of a skill set, as good as Dak is, Justin can do some things that maybe no other quarterback in the NFL can do.
Yeah. So obviously we're talking about Kellen Moore here. Everybody,
Yes.
I'm sure knows that. Well, again, it kind of goes back to our conversation we were just talking about. I think what the best coaches that I've been around do is they take whatever that quarterback's elite skill set is, or skill set, best things they do, and they just play to those strengths. And I think Kellen fits into that mold for sure. Like, Dak is a great quarterback, but certainly a different skill set than Justin is. Mm-hmm. And so Kellen's job and what he's done is highlight the things that Dak does well. And so it'll be interesting to see what he does in the Charger offense now, highlighting Justin's strengths and what he does special and uniquely, for the Charger offense, and what he brings to the table. I can't wait to watch it, just because I know he's going to do such a great job with it.
Coach, one of the things that I'm surprised, and maybe, this is something he was working for Mike McCarthy, and maybe McCarthy wasn't as big on shifting and motioning. But I just remember watching how you guys used to shift in motion maybe 2 and 3 times every play up in Boise. Can you kind of take us behind the curtain and explain what does that do for the offense in terms of gaining an advantage with all the moving parts, with people shifting and motioning and switching sides?
Yeah, when I look back at kind of our evolution on offense, that's one of the regrets that I do have, of getting away from so much of that, especially when we came to Washington. You talk about your competitive advantage. I think that was something that we knew we did well. It was kind of in our DNA. And so it didn't feel very heavy or expensive to us in terms of how we taught it, what we were doing it, the purposes for, and the effect that it would have on the defense and the defensive coordinator. One, kind of taking him out of the game. In a way, it felt like there was so much. We'd see the tight end, trade sides or motion across. And the one technique and the 3 technique are like switching sides.
Yeah.
And then all this communication going on, and we're like, wait, rewind that? Like, what? That little thing has. So the more we could do with that, we know like there's a lot of thinking going on. And we know that, as soon as there's a lot of thinking, that execution on the other side kind of goes down.
Oh, that's incredible.
And so it's funny. That's one reason I love watching what Kellen has done at the Cowboys. I mean, it's so funny. Like, we talk about how all this thing has evolved and this new age offense. And I look at some of the things and I'm like, that is so similar to a lot what we were doing when he was winning all those games at Boise.
Yeah, Coach, we're keeping you long here. I just got a couple more and we'll let you run here. But on Kellen Moore, one more question I want to ask you on that one, because I know in talking to some defensive coaches who played against the Cowboys a bunch, they said, and I was getting ready to call a game. I think the Chargers were playing the Cowboys, so I was prepping that game, and I was just said, hey, tell me something about Kellen I don't know as a play caller. Help me out here. And he said he does the best job of anybody in the NFL of varying tempo. And I'm talking tempo from when they're out of the huddle to on the line, to when they're on the line, to when they snap the ball. But he said, it's weird to describe it as a defensive coach. It's hard to get into a rhythm with the variance that he uses.
I think that is the key right there. Especially with, all these up-paced tempo offenses. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing how fast, as we know, defenses adjust to whatever you throw at them. Mm-hmm. So if you're always doing those type of things, the defense are going to figure it out and they will stop that thing that you're doing well. And so when you have a variety, and so that's what I'm saying, like this thing was getting pushed so hard of tempo and no huddle and keeping it simple. And mm-hmm. just to be able, you can shift in motion, do all this stuff, but you don't have to shift in motion every play. You don't have to huddle up every play. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Kellen's doing so well. It's just the blend of all those things, but still staying true and having an identity of who they are. And that's where I think the real wisdom and expertise comes in for him.
So as an old offensive guru, the challenge has always been, you hear coaches talk about, hey, we want to keep it simple, but we want to make it look complex for the defense. So how do you know when I've reached that point where, okay, this is enough? I can't go overboard, because the creativity is always going when it comes to, hey, we can keep shifting and build upon what we're doing. How do you know as the head coach, okay, guys, that's enough? We're at the line where our guys can't do more. We're going to mess them up and get diminishing returns.
Yeah, and that's where I think you really start to separate the A players from the B, C players in terms of teaching and coaching and, those type of things. Because I'll tell you, like, the computers and the access to information, and you end up just chasing ghosts. You're always trying to stay one step ahead, and it's just you end up making it more complex for your players. I played for 2 Hall of Fame coaches back at UC Davis. One is Jim Soker, who is in the College Football Hall of Fame, and the other one is Bob Foster, who should be in the Hall of Fame. And he used to always say this, Bob Foster would always say, do not spoil your talent. Don't spoil your talent. And we're like, what? He goes, don't make it rotten. You pile on and give them too much stuff, all this talent and athleticism that we have, it just waters it down, and now you paralyze them. And if I heard that term, don't spoil your talent, once, I've heard it a million times to this day. And I think about that. The really good coaches, they keep it simple. There's a sophistication of complexity for the other side to look at it. I remember this. This is back in the 16 millimeter days, right? There's no videotape. To watch a team, you had to give them your tapes, and you exchanged them. And we would maybe exchange a game, sometimes two. And Bob Foster got, unbelievable, so far ahead of his time. He'd say, I want to give them all of our tapes. Like, will they take all of our tapes? Because they're going to see all this stuff that we're doing. And it's really not that complicated to us in terms of how it's taught and broke down. And it was true. I mean, the sophistication that Jim Soker and Bob Foster ran at Davis, that was part of the beauty of all these winning that these guys did there. But they made it simple for us. They taught the game. It was just really kind of black and white, and they stayed out of the gray areas. And it was just this really isn't that hard. And so I think, but it was hard, to be that level of a teacher and not spoil your talent. I think sometimes coaches get bored with things, and they just add a layer of complexity when it's working. And I know you're trying to stay one step ahead, but I think there's other ways without spoiling your talent.
That's a great lesson. I think that's true in just about any aspect of life, not even just in coaching ball. Keep the main things here. Last one for me, Coach. We'll let you run. As we're getting ready to start the season, you think back, and I know you've been in so many of these meetings. I'm always curious to go kind of behind the curtain. And if you were going to be a head coach right now, you've got your college team coming in, which is a different environment than we ever seen with the transfer portal, where you've got your existing team you had last year. You've brought in your freshmen. You've got some transfer portal kids. Maybe there's some grad transfers as well. As a coach is getting ready to meet with the team and get in front of the team for the first time, what is the right message for you? Now, you can't speak for anybody else, but for you, what would be the right message as you kick off the season?
Yeah. I mean, if there's one line that runs through my head, it's just a principle of life. You can't do this alone. Mm-hmm. No matter what you're trying to be great at, whatever you're, this football thing that we want to do the very best to our ability, we want to have this great team, you cannot do it alone. And so we're going to have to come together really quickly here and support each other and love each other and help each other and be great teammates. And I get the world we're living in. It is all about me, and how does this affect me? But I really think the special teams and the special people understand it's about how do I make those around me better? And really, really lock into that and believe that. Because I believe in the law of a harvest. You reap what you sow. If you're giving to others, you're going to get it back sooner or later. Sometimes it's not on our timetable, but I believe it comes back to you. And so that would be the theme. It's and it goes back to culture. So it's going to be about, us uncommon unity. And we're going to have to be so skilled as teachers and coaches and leaders to bring this together quickly, because it does take time. You can't cheat connections and bonding and all those type of things. But for me, this conversation we're having right here, I would be relentless on this message if we're going to try to do something special.
Let me follow that up real quick, Coach. So you talked about everyone having to kind of buy in and being team-centric. How do you handle the guys that you early on perceive to be more me-oriented as opposed to team-oriented? Do you have a bunch of one-on-ones? How do you kind of bring those wandering people back into the fold?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not going to recruit them.
Problem solved.
But I don't want to overstate this. Everybody everybody has an ego, right? And ego in it is important. Like we all do. We're prideful. We want to do good work. It's all in us. But, there's a difference between a big ego and a strong ego, right? Mm-hmm. A big ego, to me, is about arrogance. It's about self. It's about me looking good, about me being right. A strong ego, to me, is about like others. It's about trying to do something for the greater good. It's about investing in others. And if I have an idea, it's not about me being right. It's about me being, something for the greater good. Like, I think this can make us better. And so I think about it like that. There was one sign in our staff room, and it just said, "Your ego is not your amigo." And it was really a reminder for myself as the head coach. Like, don't get full of yourself, because those times that I have and didn't want to hear it from other people is when I did my worst work. I think the kiss of death in leadership and coaching and, all those type of things, like, is going to be arrogance, lack of self-awareness, and micromanaging. And I think sometimes when you sit in that chair, it's very easy to go those directions, that you can make these decisions because you think it's right and you're not really including the others, and you're heading down a wrong path. I just think, I just think that's so. If somebody we knew, on whether it was going to join us as a staff member or as a player, like, we knew it's just all about them, we're probably like, that's not the thing. Now, you're going to get guys that all of a sudden aren't getting the ball as much or aren't playing as much, and then you got to deal with those type of things. And you understand that, man, and you're trying to help them, and you're really trying to tell them what they need to do to take the next step. And if they'll, that's usually a maturation process. That takes some maturity, and it takes time to help them work through those type of things. But, like I said, it's a complicated world. And I think, the best coaches, the best leaders, they understand the psychology of all this stuff. I think the old days where you just coached football and you said, get in line. This is how we're doing it. Everybody say, yes, okay, we got it. No water breaks.
Of course. Yeah.
Just keep going for 2 hours, and then we'll think about what, maybe I joke about that. Because
Coach, we grew up.
It's like
we grew up, and that's why we grew up. That was the way we grew up.
Yeah,
is it crazy? Like, yeah. Right? How
think about, by the way, do you think about that stuff all the time? I think about it all the time. I just remember being at high school practice, college practice, guy goes down, like literally stepping over him, scoot him down, keep the drill. Let's just keep the drill going. I was like, can you imagine? You can't do that anymore, man.
And I remember being so thirsty at practice.
Oh yeah.
First, like, just going, God, I wish we had water,
Yeah. So you guys complete a pass, you can get some water, get back on the line. Like that was
so many things have changed for the better. There's no doubt. There's a lot of things in this coaching world that I'm super proud of, how it's evolved and those type of things. But when somebody's disgruntled on the practice field and things aren't going, the days of just handing them some water and saying, we good now? That doesn't really work.
Well, Coach, you've been generous, man. We kept you extra because we love talking to you. And I just want you to know that as we leave this conversation, the image I have in my mind is of you and Patrick Swayze getting on that board in Portugal, catching that wave, as Keanu Reeves just watches you guys from the stand as you go catch the big one there.
Daniel, and I want you to keep that vision in your mind and just keep saying that's it. But, Bucky, I got one thing for you on this whole coaching thing. After 33 years of coaching, there's one thing I know about great coaches. They all have three things: a patient wife, a loyal dog, and a great quarterback, but not necessarily in that order.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
He doesn't need a quarterback, Coach. He just needs.
You're right. You just need two things. You'll be good.
By the way, that kid's going. Is he already at Utah?
He's going to Utah. Yeah, he's at Utah. So the kid who's my quarterback, who I put at quarterback, is at Utah. He won the state in the 400 meters at 45.77. So
number 3 holds up. And
that's the truth. That's the truth. He is the best. Chris Petersen, you can catch him on Fox during the fall on their excellent college football coverage. Coach, hope you get a little bit of rest here. This thing's going to be here before you know it. But anytime we get a chance to visit with you, we cherish it. I know Bucky and I both have a page full of notes here, so we appreciate you, man. You're the best.
You guys are great. Have a great July.
Thanks, Coach. All right, Buck. That was a fun one, man. He's always a pleasure to talk to. I feel like we love the conversations when we get to take notes, when they give you something worthy of writing down. And from the sign on the door, your ego is not your amigo, was fantastic. He talked about the three things that get you in trouble as a coach. You think about arrogance, a lack of self-awareness, and micromanaging. I mean, these are great tips and tools, not just for a coach, but anybody in a position of employment.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about it. We both are guys who love learning and studying the leadership space and team building, successful teams, companies, whatever that looks like. And so to have someone as accomplished as Coach Petersen share those things, yeah, they're takeaways that you can implement in your own existence. I just think finding a coach who's had the success that he's had, who walked away for the game to help others become better. He talked about being a consultant with other coaches, kind of being that confidant that they can kind of sound things off of. Man, I can't imagine being able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody who's as knowledgeable as that, who's had the success and the expertise with all of his experiences to be able to give you those golden nuggets when you need them.
Yeah, he was outstanding. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We are getting close to the NFL season. Gosh, less than a month away, Buck. We'll be out at training camp. We'll be off and running. Hopefully you guys are getting some barbecue time, some pool time, lake time, beach time, whatever you're doing to rest and relax. Hopefully you're enjoying these podcasts that were given to you as well. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here, Buck?
No, man, I think this is a great one. I think everyone should enjoy the holiday. Happy 4th of July to all of those who are going to participate in barbecues across the line.
Be safe with the fireworks, by the way.
Be easy with the fireworks.
Easy on that one. All right, that's going to do it for us. Appreciate you guys. Happy 4th of July. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.